Hello and welcome to another episode of Battle Ready.
We're ready.
Okay. Where today we thought we would talk about avoiding hobby burnout. So Drake, what is hobby burnout?
Where you don't want to do it.
Yeah, so sometimes you just, the idea of painting another model or
You run out of steam.
yeah, you just sort of run out of steam. You just don't want to do it anymore. And well, when you do that, stuff doesn't get painted.
No.
And that means you can't have new exciting experiences on the tabletop.
My pile of shame.
So, yeah, and the pile of shame grows.
My pile of shame has been getting smaller.
That's good. That's real good. So we thought we would talk about what are the things that keep us motivated, and what can maybe you think about or do to help yourself kill off the gray and get some models painted and onto the tabletop.
You have gray all over your shirt.
That's true.
You need to get that painted.
So what would you say is your number one hobby motivation tip?
Read the battle tome excessively.
Read the battle tome. Why that?
Because it's like, yeah, I'm gonna play with these guys. I'm gonna make them go kill things.
So you get psyched up by the lore?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. The more you can build sort of a story around your models, the better. Now, a lot of times that comes from the battle tome, but sometimes that might come from novels.
Yeah.
Sometimes that might come from your own
brain
that you're working out. You're like, well, my guys are actually this
yellow
special fighting force who does blah, blah, blah. And so you can make your own personal lore, your headcanon, right?
No.
And I think that's pretty cool. I think the one thing you should never do is make it a chore. Never, ever, ever make it a chore.
No.
If you get home from work or if you get home from school or whatever, and you just think, nah, today's not the day. I'm not feeling it. I don't want to get my painting stuff out. I don't want to deal with the hassle. I don't want to hook up my airbrush, whatever it is. We don't even have an airbrush, so we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. One thing less.
One thing less. But maybe you're just not interested in. Then my advice would be, so don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
I think that if you make it a chore where I have to finish this unit, or I have to paint an hour every day because I told myself I would, or whatever it is, it starts to be work and it's less fun. Great example, Drake. How do you like playing piano?
It's good when I get it, but practicing it is the worst.
So Drake has to practice piano every day, and he's getting better. He's getting pretty good, actually. But because it's a chore, because it's a have to, he doesn't like it as much. Whereas when it comes to models, there's never a have to. I think it's cool when he does, and I think he's good at it, but there's never well, today you're painting your models, right? There's just that rule is never out there. So Drake only paints when he wants to, so it is always a fun experience. So I think that's super important. Make sure, and I think if you take a little bit of break, sometimes absence makes the heart grow fonder, right? You take a little bit of break, and then when you come back to it, you're like, oh yeah, I do like doing this. Oh yeah, this is pretty cool. What else keeps you motivated?
Sometimes just watching battle reports, like, yeah, I should go do this. I should go fight.
Yeah, I think sometimes, especially for us, some people they're in it for the painting and the modeling, right?
Yes.
And that's cool if that's your jam. That's just not super us. But we are definitely into it for the game. We love playing the game. We're excited every weekend when we set aside a little time to play some Age of Sigmar.
Yeah, Sigmar.
And one of the things that keeps us motivated is Drake loves watching the Warhammer Plus battle reports, as well as those on Mini Wargaming, right? You like the Mini Wargaming ones?
Trolls.
And by watching it, we sort of get hyped up and we get excited. And we're like, oh, I really want to play. So I'm going to finish off these models so that my models can be on the table and do cool stuff. So that gets you excited, gets you motivated.
Yeah.
I think one thing that helps me a lot is I have a very low, almost no pile of shame. I think if you buy a lot of models that you just haven't put together and you've got boxes and boxes and boxes of unbuilt guys, man, it can be overwhelming. It's instead of being a fun little thing you can do, you look over and your project pile is 7 feet tall and it just looks like a mountain, and you feel like how am I ever going to eat this elephant? You're paralyzed to start because the whole task at a time looks so daunting. Whereas what I like to do is I try to keep, as much as possible, try to keep my pile of shame at the game store. That's where those models I'm going to paint someday are, or online or wherever, right? But they're not in my house. So as I finish a little project, I get to think, ooh, now as a little treat, I can get the next thing, right? And then because it's new, I'm excited to build that and to paint that and to do those things. And then as I finally finish that one, ooh, it's time for a treat. I can get a new thing. And that way, I get to have my little projects that I like, but it never feels overwhelming. I only have a couple of kits. Actually, I would have 0 kits right now, other than the fact that my birthday just passed, so I got a couple of models. So I have a few models in boxes.
Okay.
But other than that, keep those stuff at the store so that your project pile is pretty small, and that way you always are able to get excited about the thing you have and to get excited for the next thing, because the next thing is whatever you get. I think some people get into a problem where they're like, oh, that model looks really cool, I want to buy that. And they look back at all their other boxes and unfinished models and think, oh, but I can't get the new thing because I still have to paint all the old things. And then that turns the old things into
older things.
A chore, right? I can't get the cool thing until I eat my vegetables, right? I can't have my cake until I eat my vegetables. And so, just don't do that to yourself, right? Keep that pile of shame small, and that way it's always cake time. It's always time for cake. You could have slice after slice of cake.
Cake.
What else?
What if it's a lie?
That might be a lie. What else do you think?
What I made up.
You made up?
Yeah. Listen to some random recording of someone saying, yeah, you can paint that model. Yeah, go build that model.
Yeah, positive affirmation, I guess. I have never found those sorts of things, like when I'm training or lifting or whatever. I've never found those sorts of things particularly helpful, although some people love them, right? That sort of motivational type stuff.
Do it.
But one thing that I do find helps a lot when I'm going to paint is now, granted, I'm not the best painter, and painting's also not my favorite. It's probably my least favorite part of the hobby. But you put on an audiobook, you put on a podcast, you put on something that you like listening to, and then you need something to do with your hands. It works pretty good.
Yeah.
It works pretty good. It makes those times a lot more interesting, and it makes getting to it really good. Now, I've heard some people say things like, well, if you're not motivated to do the hobby, tell yourself, I'm just going to do one thing. So I'm just going to paint the boots and then I'll be done. And then at the end, if you're done, you're done. And if once you have all your stuff out, you think, well, everything's out, I might as well do the pants.
Yeah.
I might as well do his shirt. And then before you know it,
it's done.
You've painted a model that you weren't motivated to paint. I'm not a fan of that, because
every once in a while I might catch myself doing it.
So if it works for you, let me make sure I'm clear here. If that's what motivates you and it works for you and you find that you have more success that way, go for it. I'm not trying to talk down to anybody's, whatever works for sure.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work for me because, firstly, if I say I have to paint one thing, suddenly it starts to feel like a chore. And second of all, the idea of getting out all my paint supplies and getting out getting my wet palette ready and my paint cup and doing all the stuff just to paint one character's boots. Oh my gosh, that makes it worse. Because getting your stuff out and putting your stuff away at the end is the worst part for sure. Because that's just a chore no matter what you do with it. So saying I have to do all that to get one pair of boots done is like, forget that noise, man. I'm not doing that. But if I have to do all that and then get a whole unit painted, or at least substantially progress a whole unit, right? Because I'm a big fan of batch painting. That is more motivating. Then I'm like, okay, now the juice is worth the squeeze, right? Thank you. The benefit I get is worth the pain of going through all the rigmarole of putting everything together. Yeah. And pain being like pain in the neck, not actual physical pain.
I personally think eyes the worst.
What eyes?
Like painting eyes is terrible.
I don't even paint eyes anymore. I used to try to put them on at least for hero characters because I try to put a little bit more effort into the heroes just for so that they look a little bit better on the table, and also just to practice some things a little bit more, things like edge highlighting and things like that I don't always do on the troops. And I even on the heroes now I don't, unless they're really big eyes, so like a Gargant
troll,
or
I
a
personally
monster, maybe a troll. But if they're a human-sized head that's this big, it's ridiculous because I have found that I just don't see the difference. Because now that I've done some with eyes and a lot without, when we play on the tabletop, I can't tell. I can't tell which models have eyes that I painted and which ones aren't. And so why did I go through all that effort and put the white in and then reshape the eye with more skin color and then put the black in? Oh, and then I got to put a little bit more white to shape that black. Oh, now I got to put a little more skin color to shape the white. And so I've gotten some eyes that look pretty good, but you have to look at the model like this.
In your face.
When it's on the tabletop, you can't tell at all. And so once I realized that, unless it's a monster, unless it's something big, if it's something big where they have a big eye, big eyeballs,
Maw Crusher,
maybe a Maw Crusher, maybe like a Kragnos. I mean, a bigger model.
a big boy.
I will do it because then you can tell, and then I think it's worth it.
But
if you have a human-sized model, or even like a big human, like a Stormcast or a Chaos Warrior or something like that.
When you did it on the big boy hammers, I could tell that the eyes were like
I think you can, if you look at them. But I think when they're on the tabletop and you're looking at them, if you're sitting here and they're over there, you'll never know.
I actually do. I noticed their eye.
Well, I appreciate that.
Storm eyeballs of justice.
I appreciate you noticing. So yeah, I don't even do the eyeballs. And that's another thing when it comes to staying motivated. I think some people set these super high standards for themselves where they feel like, I'm going to paint this model and it's going to be the bestest model I ever did. And it's going to be amazing. And I'm going to be the king of models. And I'm going to make it look better than the magazines. No, don't do that to yourself. Don't do it. Because first of all, that's way, way more than is necessary to have a good time at the table. Now, if that's what you want, if you are in the hobby for the modeling and painting, more power to you, right?
More power.
Awesome. No criticisms. But if you are just trying to get good games on the table, you are sabotaging yourself. You are making it harder than it needs to be. You're making it take longer than it needs to do. You're making the experience less enjoyable. And all three of those things are going to make you not want to paint. And then that's going to make you not have as fun, or maybe not even want to play, right? So don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Get to a standard you're happy with, a standard that looks good from 2 feet away on the table, and then do that, right? Finish that unit. Get some games in. Anything looks better than gray. And then the difference between like a good tabletop quality sort of standard and something that's display on the tabletop there's not a huge realm of difference. The amount of additional enjoyment you get is not even worth a quarter of the additional time you put in. Now, if you want something you can put in a cabinet and display to people and have people look at real close up and turn and see all the cool shading and blending and stuff that you did.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe you take your time. Right? If that's what you want, great. But if you want stuff that's going to be fun on the table because you want to play this super cool game, just leave all that. Give yourself permission to cut some corners. You don't need to you don't need to edge highlight every panel. You don't need to wet blend every color on there. You can just have some models that look good.
Yeah.
From a distance. What else?
I think I've said everything I can think of. Yeah,
I think that for me, the main takeaways are: don't make it a chore, so you always want to do it when it's time.
Yeah.
And don't give yourself a mountain of pile of shame.
Yeah.
Right? Don't look at your pile of shame as a big chore, a big thing you have to get through. It's funny, when Drake was young and he has 2 sisters, and they both needed car seats. So they had car seats, and that meant Drake was in the middle.
Yeah.
And the first time he was in the middle, he turned to me and he said, "Dad, why do I have to be in the middle?" And I turned to him and said, "No, Drake, you get to be in the middle. That's the coolest seat." And Drake was like, "I get to be in the middle. This is amazing." And that worked for a long time. That was a good way to keep Drake in the middle and not complaining for quite some time.
Remember
No,
that.
you were little. But in the same way, if you look at your pile of shame and say, I have to get through all of this stuff,
instead,
it's not fun.
You get to have a pile of shame.
But if you look at it and say, once I finish this project, I get to have more models, or I get to start something new. If you have that mentality, then hobbying's pretty exciting. It's pretty fun to get through stuff. So I think really that's the main, everything else is sort of wrapping that up, right? The main thing is don't make it a chore.
Yes.
Do everything you can to make it a fun, a pleasurable experience. Whether that's the just paint one thing, which doesn't work for me, but maybe works for you.
Yeah.
Or whether that's the put on a cool podcast or audiobook that I like, or whatever it is, just make it a pleasurable experience, and you'll find that you've got more motivation than you think. If it's not a chore, and maybe you need a week away, maybe you need 2 weeks away, right? Maybe you just got a new video game, and so you're like, well, this is hobby time for a while. For the next few weeks, I'm going to be playing this game, and that's going to be taking my hobby time. Cool. Don't feel guilty. Enjoy your time. And then when you beat the game or whatever, your hobby paints and stuff, they're all still there.
Hopefully.
Yeah, don't throw them out.
Yeah.
That's probably the least motivating thing you can do, is throw out all your paints. But yeah, so take breaks, make sure it's always fun, and then you will be excited to paint, not because you need motivation, but because painting is enjoyable, or at least...
And painting your individual hairs.
Oh, that's good. Good highlights on those hairs. Even if, like for me, if it's not enjoyable necessarily, it's at least tolerable, and that I can look as I'm painting, even though I don't enjoy the act of painting, I'm painting looking forward to when these guys get on the table.
You didn't even enjoy painting Squigs.
Squigs are the least objectionable because they got fun faces.
Not even rats.
So I think that is it for us. If you have any tips on staying motivated in the hobby, keeping the enjoyment going, loving to paint for long periods of time, and I mean over the course of months and years, rather than just like a 10-hour session or something like that.
Yeah.
But if you have tips, please drop them below in the comments. I would love to hear what you have to say. Final thoughts, any?
The one I want to have is, if all else fails, consider a personal hype man.
Consider a personal hype man. Hire somebody on to just get you razzed. All right. Well, this has been another episode of Battle Ready.
Ready.
Thanks so much for watching.